practices, or probably master students, are you really expecting a bachelor student to do that? I'm like, yeah, that's not a big deal. I mean, research is big, it's difficult, it's time consuming, it takes a lot of efforts, but not much as a beginner. I mean, who is asking you to do a wholesome big project in just the beginning? You can start slow, you can start with something basic, right? Now, a very cool thing about research is that even observation is research. I mean, if I ask you to observe something, just conduct a survey and write it down, just discuss the survey in your words and share the results. Uh, is it difficult? Do you really need a lot of knowledge for it? Well, no, it's just observation, and that's a research. I have done that. I'll quickly, like shortly show some of my work on how I got started and how basic it is. So moving further, how can you start with a research project and write a research paper? Now, as I said, as a beginner, you can start even with observation-based project or something which you might have heard as review paper, right? It's a type of research paper. You have innovative research papers, you have review papers, you have case studies, and so on. So review paper is something where you do the exact thing which the word review says. You just review the existing things. For example, if I say, let's talk about brain tumor detection using machine learning, or analysis of certain data in your university. So analyzing the educational data at your university. Now, this first one, that is brain tumor detection, although if we talk about an observation paper in it, so you're not really creating a new model or not working on certain images, but what you're doing is probably going searching certain research papers, the newer ones, which has been published in last 2 years or 3 years, and talking what happened there, what happened with them. For example, if I can find 100 research on this subject in the last 2 years, and if I can summarize all that into my paper in my own words, then that's a review paper where I'm reviewing the current research, the trends in that research in that domain. So if a third person who wants to read this subject, wants to learn about the recent trends or the recent advancements in the brain tumor detection using machine learning area, instead of reading those 100 papers, that person can directly go to my paper and read my paper and can get knowledge about those 100 papers. Isn't it interesting? And that's not difficult. I'll share shortly. So moving on to defining your research area or working on a research project or starting with a paper, the first thing is confining your research area. Now, you cannot say I'm doing research in computer science. The next question would be what in computer science. Even if you say in computer science, maybe machine learning, then the next question would be what in machine learning. If you say brain tumor detection using machine learning, then it will be like, okay, a lot of people have already done brain tumor detection using machine learning. What exactly are you doing? So a lot of questions, right? You need to have a confined research area. Now, most of us have certain areas in mind, like certain domains in mind. Probably you are interested in cybersecurity, machine learning, or a lot of a lot of you here, as I know, are interested in data analysis. But if you're confused, probably just go for hit and trial method. Try different things out and just gather which one are you most interested in. Once you have fixed that area, look for certain recent papers in that area or look for existing papers. You can find papers in Google Scholar. I hope you know that, but then maybe if one or two of you don't know that, we can go on Google Scholar and explore that as well. So and try deciding your own research strategy. So let's try to do this. Let's take example. For example, if we are interested in cybersecurity, right? That's our domain. And then we want to look for trends in cybersecurity research. So maybe I can search for cybersecure on Google Scholar. So this is scholar.google.com. I can search for cybersecurity, maybe review, because someone has recently published a review of literature of cybersecurity, which talks about recent advancements in cybersecurity in the last 2 years. Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. So yes, so Google Scholar, scholar.google.com, and I search about cybersecurity review of literature, and let me just enter here so that I get the recent one. So maybe I can also enter month. Maybe let's see if we get something around Feb 2022. So I can see here this paper, if you see, which is cybersecurity awareness, knowledge, behavior, a comparative study, which has been published very recently, 2022, in one of the journals by Taylor and Francis. It has got citation of 61, which shows that it's a good paper. And then now we can go ahead, read this, and know more about what are the recent advancements in this subject. And after reading that, maybe you can read more on a specific thing and then decide to work on one of those things. Now, here I did talk about mentioned about something about citations or cited by 61. What does that mean? So when you publish a paper, for example, this person is willing published this paper. Now, when you read this paper, now all the papers have a section called references. The references in the references, you mention the papers that you are using in your research. Probably you're taking some knowledge from those papers, or maybe directly indirectly using some of the content from that paper. And thus, since you're using some content from that paper, you add this paper in the references, right? Now, citations mean that how many papers have referenced this paper. So this specific paper called Cybersecurity Awareness, Knowledge, and Behavior has been referenced by 61 other papers which were published after this paper was published. So it shows how strong this paper is, or how popular this paper is, and how much people have already created a trust on this paper. So citations can be one of the way you compare different papers to know if it's a good paper or not. Other ways can be looking where it has been published, if it's a good journal, if it's a popular journal, and so on. So let's open this paper, and I can see here it's a Journal of Computer Information Systems by Taylor and Francis. It has got some 17 pages, and it has certain section which is introduction. So we'll just quickly have a glimpse of it. It's theoretical backgrounds. It shows about the impact of internet and cyber and security, like a general introduction about cybersecurity. But as you move further, it will show you certain materials and methods where it will talk about the recent things, because as you go through the paper, you'll see certain citations where this paper is citing certain recent papers who have worked on cybersecurity research. So you can use this, and you can use this to develop your own research or get ideas about what you can do in this domain, right? We can take another example. For example, getting back to what we were discussing earlier, brain tumor detection. Current research domain of brain tumor detection maybe is use of machine learning for healthcare. If I search this and put review as a keyword in front of it with the year 2022, I get some paper over here. Machine learning for workflow application. I'll try finding something which is general, like a general topic instead of being a specific one. Right? Like in this case, it's about mammography. In this case, it's about coronavirus. But let's take a general paper, for example, this an application of machine learning in healthcare and IoT, a comprehensive review. Now, if I open this again, it's a new one. It doesn't have a lot of citation, but we can read it. There's a lot of hidden trial in research, right? You have to read a lot of things. Probably you read something, you don't like it, it's not a quality work, you go on some other thing, you read that, you get something from there. If not, then you read something else. So a lot of reading and extraction of information, which goes on in a loop while you're working in research or doing certain research. Um, so here's this paper, which is application of machine learning in healthcare, and it will show like if you read the abstract. Now, abstract is a great way to find what the research paper is about. It's a summarized version of the whole research paper. So a lot of times you can simply read abstract and know whether it's something of your interest or it's something relevant to your work or not. If not, you can just end it there and move on to other paper instead of wasting a lot of time. If I see abstract here, it says in recent years, smart healthcare IT devices have become ubiquitous, but they work in isolated networks due to their policies. Having these devices connected in network enable us to perform medical distributed data analysis. Now, we don't get a lot of things from this complex statement, but what I understand is that it talks about certain research work in smart healthcare using IoT devices. If I move further, it shows me certain sections on IoT in healthcare, big data in IoT healthcare, IoT pipeline. And I understand that this paper is less about machine learning and more about IoT, but we have this section as well, which is machine learning challenges in IoT healthcare and so on. Now, when you read a lot of these paper, you understand that you can do that narrowing down of your research title. For maybe you started with machine learning in healthcare, and now you read this paper, and now you're interested in IoT, and specifically this paragraphs tell you about what are the limitations or challenges. So probably you can take up a certain challenge and then work on it, right? So this is how you define your area or title of your research. Now, getting back to our GitHub repo, now deciding your own title is done. Once you have decided your own title, the next is general format of research paper or how to go further. So, for example, you found your area that you want to work on, machine learning, IoT in healthcare. You look for certain challenge, and you want to find solution to that challenge. Now, how do you go about it? So, give certain your research paper a title. Now, a lot of people, there are two different ways, right? A lot of people, what they do is they work on the project and then they start their research paper. They don't do any writing or any sort of writing work while they're working on the project. But what I do is that I do both the things parallelly. So I start my paper, and while I'm writing my paper, I also work on the project, because what I understand is that, for example, I give my paper a title, and then as I said, abstract is written at the last, so you can skip abstract as of now. But then the next section is introduction. While I'm writing the introduction section, it's a good way for me to understand more about my topic. So while I'm writing my introduction, I'm in a way making myself ready to work on the research project. That's why I like working on the research project and the research paper parallelly at the same time. So I write introduction, and then I move to literature review, which is the second section. Now, literature review talks about general literature of the subject. So literature is everything that already exists, like the literature, like the word literature, which is the text and materials and resources that are available on a topic. So probably in this, you share about some of the recent publication and work on this subject and how it inspired you to work on this. For example, if we go back to this example that we took earlier about IoT, machine learning, and healthcare, and you are working on one of the problem statement that was in that paper. So probably in the literature, you can reference this paper that we read, that in this paper, XYZ researcher talked about the challenges that are there with machine learning and IoT applications in healthcare. Then you can describe about those some of those challenges, and then maybe you can at last say that and what you are trying to do with this paper. So a literature review, introduction literature review, can act as a very perfect story. You need to create a story which tells what is around this research, why are you working on this specific title. Moving further, the next section is proposed methodology, a proposed model. Now, what's your proposal? I mean, if this specific thing is a challenge, what do you propose? What should be done to solve this challenge? Are there certain ways? You talk about that. You write about that. The next is result and discussion, where you have already implemented, uh, after implementing your proposed methods or proposed model, what are the results that you get? So you can use certain tables or figures to display those results and further discuss them in words. Like with this people with this figure, you can see that these are the things which are in trend, and so on, XYZ, right? And that's how you discuss the results. Finally, you conclude with what your conclusions are about that research. That what were your conclusions? Were you able to solve the problem, the challenge? If not, even that is the research. You can give. You can tell them, as long as you are able to justify why you were not able to solve this challenge. What are the limitations, and what's your future goal is gonna be? How can you solve this challenge in future? What do you aim to do? So even if you're probably solving 10% of the problem or 5% of the problem, your paper is ready to publish. It's not like it won't get published, because people want to know what efforts did you put in and what results did you get. And all this is something that you talk about in the conclusion section, along with future work and limitations. And finally, references. As I told earlier, while you're writing your paper, you're referencing a lot of other literature, other papers, and you need to respect them. You need to mention them in your references, and those will get added as citation to those respective papers. Now, let's take a quick pause here. If you have any questions. Feel free to ask any question if you have. Let this be a discussion more than a one-way session. You can also unmute instead of typing. Okay, I gather that there are no questions, so I'll just move. Mhm. So when I talk about general format of research paper, I more like meant of the skeleton of the paper, like how the paper should be, or what are the general subdivisions that you have. But then it can change, right? As we saw in this paper which I shared earlier, that it had, since it was based on machine learning and IoT in healthcare, it had certain subheadings and sections relevant to that. So accordingly, that can change. Now, publications don't have any suggested skeleton. They have format, but by that they mean that format of paper in the sense the formatting, the textual formatting, like how the font or uh, text size should be and all that. So publications have that kind of format that they have listed. But when I talk about the skeleton of the paper or what sections or subsection it should have, there's generally nothing specific that is suggested. Okay, so I'll move further. Now, the next section comes to how to get your paper published. But before that, let's look at some of my papers and how I got started and how did I follow this general format. So I'll go to scholar.google.com, and as we used this earlier to find research papers, you can similarly go research for any researcher and find their papers, right? You can see their profile, how many citations they have, what are their research areas, and this is a great way to even find your research supervisors. So if you're looking for internships abroad, like how I did, I used a lot of time. I used Google Scholar for that. So, for example, if I'm click on this tag, and it shows certain researchers who have which are sorted by citations. So it shows researchers in the spending citations in the section, and this way I can maybe reach out to certain some of them, message them that I'm interested in working with them, and so on. Right. So you can use this tag on Google Scholar. Now, getting back to some of my papers, so let me jump on to the paper that I wrote first, like my first paper, which was Swarm Intelligence Based System, a review. So I got started with the review paper. And I also suggest people to get started with review paper when they are beginners because it is relatively easy. It helps you enhance your knowledge. And after writing a review paper, you are better ready to work on your own research paper or own research project. Uh, So this is my paper, which says Swarm Intelligence Based System, a review. I wrote it with one of my friend and one of my professor. It got published in one of the conference, like I presented it one of the conference, which was by Springer. It was an international conference, and it got published as a book chapter. Now, what is swarm intelligence? So, have you seen? Do you understand the meaning of swarm? Swarm means group. Like if you see this image, it shows swarm of auklets. Auklets are bird, and usually these animals or birds or insects have behavior of working in group. For example, birds or ants, they have certain pattern on how they work. They have collaborative working environments with their roles divided, which is very smart because they cannot communicate properly. They don't have uh, a lot of intelligence as we do, but still they are able to do this collaborative working. with ants, you might have seen trail of ants who are taking their food from one way to other, and there's certain ways in which they communicate that the food is in this direction or in that direction, and so on. Or birds, they create certain patterns in the sky while they're flying, which probably helps with certain aerodynamic features or something. So they have this collaborative working environment. Now, in a lot of things in computer science are inspired by just biological beings, like neural networks is inspired by our human brain, how human neurons or brain neuron works. That's how we derive the artificial neural network or working of artificial neurons. Now, a lot of things in computer science are derived from biology or the environment. Similarly, the swarm robotics is the robotics which has been inspired from this animal behavior, this animal collaborative group behavior of animals. So that's how that was the topic about, and I wrote a review paper. So nothing in this paper is innovated by me or my team. We just read a lot of different papers and extracted certain information from those papers to create our own paper. So it started with introduction, where I obviously gave introduction of swarm intelligence, which I just told. So it talks about that with certain images, and then it shows a general comparison of swarm robots with traditional, right? Like how are they different? You can see this image of a swarm robot based system, which is inspired by ants. So we have tried to create certain robots which follows or mimics the behavior of ants. They're trailing in line. So what happens in swarm-based system? The goal is to create certain systems which are um, decentralized and autonomous in a way that none of these robots are leader. All of them have equal position, and they work in an autonomous way yet collaborative. So, for example, if a specific of the robot starts moving in certain direction, the others will see that and try to follow it, since they are following an ant behavior. And that's what we're trying to define in this system or software. So again, it sounds complex, but gather that I didn't do it. I just read it and rewrote it. So it's not a big. It's not really. In future, I plan to create this system. That might be a big thing, and that's where I might need a lot of guidance. But at this stage, as a bachelor student, what I did was I just wrote a review paper on a little complex subject, which you can even do, right? And I write about features of Scrum robots, which is decentralized, the size, the homogeneous nature, that all the robots are similar, so they're homogeneous, um, and so on. Then I write about the general architecture of Swarm robots. So we are using certain papers to write about this. For example, even this image has been taken from this paper, which has been cited at the first bullet point in the references, and so on. So this is how I wrote my paper, like application of Swarm. So a general overview, we can say overview of Swarm robotics was displayed in this paper, and that's how I wrote it, right? Concluding it with a conclusion and with references. Now that's how this was my first paper. That's how you write a review based paper. I'll also show certain other paper which I wrote in future. Okay, for example, this one. Now, this is one of my popular paper. Like out of all the papers that I have, this one has the most citation, which is still less, but most of all the other ones. So it has 12 citations. So I'll show you this paper. Okay. So this is a comparative study of various binary classification algorithms and their improved variance for optimal performance. Now we have a lot of binary classification algorithms, right? Like logistic regression, naive Bayes. Some of you might know, some of you might not, but then you can still follow this discussion. Now, what I did in this paper was I just did a comparative study of this binary classification algorithms and with their improved variance, by which I mean that I did some certain tuning and something to create their improved variance. Now, I considered 5 such algorithms like logistic regression, k-nearest neighbors, decision tree, naive Bayes, and random forest. I considered 2 main data set. One of which is the Titanic data set, and other is UCI machine learning breast cancer Wisconsin's data set. Now, both these data sets are available on public repositories like Kaggle or something. So I wrote about introduction, that what I plan to do in this research. Then I wrote about the experimentation, that what are the just defining what data I consider. Then I wrote a paragraph each about the algorithms that I am using in this research. So a logistic regression, I write a paragraph about it, and so on, along with their results. So I implemented these algorithms on both of my data set and got accuracy with certain cross validation. So if you have knowledge of machine learning, you already know cross validation. If not, then not to worry about, because this session is not about machine learning, but I'm trying to communicate the way you should one can approach for basic papers. So I write about these results that I got on both the data set for all the five algorithms. And finally, I display a general comparative table over here on different features that I compared and the results that I got. For example, logistic regression, I found that in matter of speed is very fast in the optimization finding results, whereas decision tree random forest is a little slow because it's an simple technique. Or I compare about other learning other features like learning type, the transparency of the model, the memory usage, and the performance of a big data. Now, the aim of this research was that if a third person has certain data, based on the quality of that data, they can try to intuitively find with this table that which of these algorithm is expected to work best, or without lesser computation, or with lesser cost, right? So that was the aim. That's how I wrote this paper. I published this paper at one of the IEEE conference, which is a Region 10 symposium, which happens at Asia level. This specific conference that year happened in Bangladesh. Unfortunately, it was COVID, so I presented this paper online. I could not visit Bangladesh, but then it was fun to even present the paper online. This time, this series of conference, that is IEEE Region 10 Symposium, is happening in Mumbai, because this time it is being hosted by the IEEE Bombay section. Um, Moving further, so these were two papers that I showed how it looks like and how a general paper that I wrote initially looked like. Now, moving further, going back to our uh, sorry for the disturbance. Moving further, so the general format for a research paper, which looks like you have a title, so this one was done. How to get it published? Sorry. So how to get the paper published? Now there are generally two ways on how you can get the paper published: via journals or via presenting them in conferences and getting them published in the proceedings of conferences. Now it's very important to focus to publish your papers at good venue, because there are many bad venues. When we talk about journals, there are many not so good journals that I'll label as. And it's not effective to publish your papers in those journals. I mean, a lot of times what happens is that some of my friends applied to certain colleges for their masters, and there was discussion around certain papers that they published. And since they didn't publish it at a good venue, it was a little discouraging on their profile. So it's very important to publish your paper on at good venues. Better not to publish than publishing at a bad venue. So when you're focusing on journals, make sure you check what's there. If they have certain indications like DOI number, ISSN number, what's their impact factor. These are certain metrics that is available on the journal website, which is good to check with. Understand that as of now you might not be able to assess, but then the good way would be to reach out to your research supervisors, your professor, and ask them whether the journal that you were targeting is a good one or not. It should be indexed by certain research accreditations. Like, okay, my dog is barking. I hope it's not a lot disturbing, but I'll just continue. So, whether it is indexed by certain research accreditations like SCI, Scopus, or Web of Science. If it is, then it's a good way to go. Again, as of now, you might not be able to assess those publications properly, but then the best way would be reaching out to your supervisors and asking them whether these things exist or not. The second is sending it to conferences rather than journal, right? So, for example, IEEE or Sprinter and Squire are some of the popular conferences that happen that are often conducted throughout the world, and you can submit your paper to relevant conferences, right? For example, IEEE conference on data analytics or something like relevant to your subject. So you can go to the website. You have certain format on how you need to reformat your paper, like the font and everything, whether they wanted dual column, single column, all that. And then they have certain procedures and dates on submission, like what are the deadline for submission, what is the procedure for submission. You can find all this information on the website of the conference and submit your paper. Once you have submitted your paper, they take quite a while to review your paper. Um, Once reviewed, they tell you whether your paper is accepted for that conference or not. If not, they'll tell you the reason why not. They'll tell you what things to update or improve on so that you can improve on those and submit the paper again to certain other venues who might then accept your paper. Right? And if your paper is accepted, you have to register for the conference, go to the conference, present your paper, listen to others. And it's a brilliant way. It's a good community of researcher where you learn a lot and understand about a lot of research which is done around the globe on different topics of research within your area of research. Then for going to the conferences, there are different travel grants. So let me share my quick experience with one of the conferences that I went to. In 2019, before COVID, I went to international conference. So it was an IEEE conference, which was conducted by the UAE section, IEEE conference on computational intelligence in knowledge economy, which was conducted by Amity University, Dubai. Um, I got opportunity, since it was before COVID, I got opportunity to travel to Dubai, present my paper in person, and come back. And I was the only student in that conference. It was a great privilege for me. Now, there are multiple ways on how you can get this travel sponsored, right? So there are different travel grants by the government of India or by different organizations like IBM or AICTE or IEEE. These are some of is it now? Is it breaking? Travel grants which are available by government of India or different research organizations that one can go for. I won't talk about them individually, but since you already have access to this repository, you can check these out and know more about it. Also, you can check with your university if they provide, like my college provides with certain support with the conference registration fee. So if it is in India, then you can access that and travel by your own or something like that. So that was about research paper, right from scratch, how to decide your research paper, your research domain, how to write your paper, how to get it published, and so on. Quickly talking about the second part of this repo, which I usually talk about and students are interested in knowing, is going for research internships. Now, many undergraduate students are in doubt whether to go for research internships or not. So this section will tell you about that. Now, why research internships? Working environment and you a student to build and practice new skills. The best thing about research is independence. When you're working in company, not discouraging working in corporate, but when you're working in corporates, eventually you're working on someone else's dream, the CEO's dream, working on their idea and developing on that and getting on. But with your research, you're working on your own thing. I mean, you can work, actually, you can literally work on something that you want to work on. No one is there to stop you, right? So with research internship, you get enough knowledge of the question. At the same time, you get to practice and build new skills. You get perspective on the current ongoing research. It helps you decide if you want to pursue higher studies. So if you are looking for to go for higher studies, masters or PhD, research is very important for you. I mean, you can get great opportunities with your research profile. Like I have built up my profile with research, and today I have offers from CMU, to do a PhD at CMU, Carnegie Mellon University, with free of cost. They have waived my tuition and they're offering me living stipend, so I don't have to pay. Instead, I am getting paid while I do my PhD at United States. I've also got offer for masters from the University of British Columbia at Canada, and all this is done because I had a good research profile. Now, if you are looking forward to do higher studies after your bachelor's, then research is very important for you. Another thing is you get letter of recommendation. So while I was submitting letter of recommendation for my research for my master's and PhD program, I got my letter of recommendation from some of my research supervisors who were already based in United States and Canada. So while I was applying to certain universities in United States and Canada, it was more trustable for the admission committee to trust on the recommendations that came from the university's name that they knew about or the professors that knew about, right? You can write your own papers, you create your own profile, and lastly, it boosts your resume for any research-based job or, or academia. I mean, you don't have to stick to academia for research. If you think like a lot of people have this misconception that if you do research, then you have to work in academia. That's not true. If you're interested in academia, then it's a great thing to do. You're with a white collar job, helping society. But if you're not interested, there are research labs at different tech organizations like Microsoft Research, Google Research, IBM Research, and so on. And with this research profile that you build, you can work with them. Some of the research opportunities over here are India with IIT Delhi, Precog Research Group at IIIT Delhi, IIIT Delhi Research Concepts. I've pasted the link. Then the MyTax Canada Global Link Research Internship Program, which is one of the popular program, the best program, research program of the world. I was selected for this program.
software you use in your research?
Um, okay. So with Penn Center of Learning Analytics, our research is mostly associated. So my area of research is educational data mining. So what we try
Okay.
to focus on is use the concepts of data analysis and data sciences for educational data or for higher education. So a lot of our research is involved around using a logistic regression or basic mathematical statistics based tools, and for that we our programming language is very handy. So we mostly use R, Python, or for database we use SQL. So those are some of the tools that we use.
Okay, good. And one more thing, in your comparative study paper, which software you have used for comparing the different algorithms?
So I implemented those algorithms in Python.
And I'm very interested to know what kind of plagiarism checker software do you use in your research before you write the papers?
Right. So, for just context, I guess a student should know about it. Your paper should be unique. It shouldn't have any plagiarism. It should not be copied. So, even if you are taking references from other paper, you should rephrase it to make it unique. So, for plagiarism checking, initially I use certain open, free softwares which are available on the internet. Specifically, there is something called SEO plagiarism checker that I use. But then before submitting, I send my paper for the plagiarism check with I Authenticate, which is one of the reputed plagiarism checker, and we have a paid version at our university. So we have a facility that we can send it to the R&D lab at our university, and they get the plagiarism check done and get back to us with the report.
Okay, Vedant, thank you.
Thank you. If anyone has any other question, maybe we can wait for another 1 minute. Uh, or obviously you can also reach out to me in future via any of my social media. I'll just put my LinkedIn in the chat. Okay. Anish has also put the link for my Twitter profile in the chat, so you can reach out to me via any of these social medias, and I'll be happy to help you. So since we no longer have any question, Anish, I guess we can conclude.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vedant. It was indeed a great informative session, and we definitely learned plenty from you. Now I call upon Fahima Jahan from the Department of Data Analytics to give away the vote of thanks.
A very good evening to the respected and most distinguished lecturer of the day, Mr. Vedant Bahil, Head of the Department, Honorable Professors, and my dear friends. It seems to be a great honor to propose the vote of thanks to all who have helped us in making this webinar a very resounding success. First of all, I would like to give my hearty thanks to our guest lecturer, Mr. Vedant Bahel, for gracing today's webinar. Thank you, sir, for your very thought provoking, extremely motivating session on the topic Getting Started into a Research as a Student, and for making an excellent presentation and making this webinar a very meaningful and an interesting one. I would like to thank our beloved head of the department, Dr. R. Sridevi, and our faculty coordinator, Dr. R. Ranjani Rani, for their support. Finally, I thank all the wonderful students for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Fahima. Thank you, everyone, for attending this event and making it a successful one. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you, Vedant. It was really an impressive session and it was thought provoking.